Okay, prediction of stock market is very popular, especially on the basis of fundamental and technical analysis. However, numeric time series contain only the event and not the reasons why it occurs. While text data show rich information. One of the most important areas that influence people behavior comes from the mass media, from the perception of events that influence in media. In the pictures, you can see one tweet of former president of USA, Donald Trump, who sounded negative and caused drop in one of the US stock leading. It can be said that the stock prices are influenced by both published fundamental information and thought processes in the head of individual market participants. So it's necessary to design expert system. They will be integrate sentiment extracted from the text data, expressing positive or negative emotions, attitude, and opinion. Financial markets. Financial markets are one of the irreplaceable elements of market economy system. In financial market, disposable funds are transformed from surplus units to deficit units. In other words, financial market can be described as a system of various institutions and various instruments. One part of financial market is stock market. Stock market is usually represented by stock market indices. Stock market indices are measure of price performance of stock portfolio on the stock market as a whole or a specific segment. The efficient market hypothesis is based on the idea that the most investors are rational in processing information, while the behavior finance, on the other hand, study how do people do not achieve this idea in their decision, and how stock market makes some extent inefficient. The most common human quality, fear, anger, love, place considerable emphasis on our money decision. Intellect and emotions are interrelated and are the sources behind the human decision. Investors make irrational transactions and their irrational reaction can lead to the abnormal return or abnormal trading volume. Researchers suggest that the mood significantly influence judgment and decision making and consequently changes investor behavior. The mood or psychological state of investors in decision making can affect their preferences, risk assessment, and rational cogitation. The impact of the sentiment of equilibrium as a price still remains an open challenge. This increases the undeniable importance of examining the sentiment generation process that will be understand how the sentiment generates and influences investors' behavior. Fuzzy logic, developed by Professor Ludwig Zadek, is able to describe uncertainty and ambiguity about fuzzy logic for Professor Dostal yesterday. Type 1 can integrate more uncertainty. If the system has a large amount of uncertainty, type 1 fuzzy may not be able to achieve required level of performance. The fuzzy logic consists of four main elements as shown in the figure: falsification, fuzzy rule base, fuzzy inference, and the falsification. As can be seen from the scheme of processing the empirical part in the picture, it's necessary to proceed in several consecutive steps to fulfill the goal. It's first necessary to gather relevant data sources. It's mainly a stream of online financial news and posts on social media. attention in my work is focused on the US stock market, which is represented by leading US index Standard & Poor 500, which is considered to be an indicator of development of US economy system. And the text data was gained from databases Kaggle and obtained news articles from servers such as Reuters, CNBC or Guardian, but also from the financial platform StockTix. Then I have to make some text analysis to transform unstructured form, text data, to structured form and apply sentiment analysis. I use hybrid approach combination, machine learning method and dictionary approach based on positive or negative words. I use several dictionary, total of 6 lexicon I use on my dissertation thesis. 4 are general and 2 are directly oriented to financial domain. Then I calculated the sentiment score and used market data. As is well known, trading strategies with or without investor sentiment only make profit if then can provide some predictability of future stock price changes. It's therefore necessary to assess the existence of co-integration, causality and lead or lag effect. Especially I use wavelet analysis to identify interaction between sentiment and stock market. In the picture, you can see that the arrow point above in the middle frequency and in the low and high frequency above and slightly to the left. This indicates the positive and cyclical relation between sentiment and stock market, and that sentiment has so-called leading effect or determine the movement of stock market. Then I create fuzzy model. Type 2 fuzzy model which can integrate more uncertainty, non-linearity and noise data that occur in financial markets. Especially I use such a model for key several reasons. It's more flexible in design, has a greater computation efficiency and can be integrated with neural network by ANFIS model. And strong emphasis is placed on the membership functions, which are neglected and insufficiently researched in most papers. So I make some models with different membership functions, integrating different level or degree of uncertainty. It's possible to achieve more than 80% prediction accuracy when integrating 10% uncertainty. Both Gaussian membership function, Bell membership function has encouraging results. Then I examine the result of backtesting an equity curve. The equity curve showed the cumulative appreciation of investing fund. The net investment was $10,000, which is valued during the test period. In the picture, you can see that the sentiment-based strategy starting relatively well from the first quarter of time horizon. And then I compete my fuzzy models, type 2 fuzzy model, with other standard to use models in financial domain. Type 2 fuzzy models with integrating 10% accuracy has the best performance. But there are some limits of my model. Because one of the main problems is the text data on financial markets are not available or not available for free. There is also lack of suitable determining software, and the process of code or scripts take a lot of time. If the large data set, the time increases disproportionately. Okay, my experiment in my dissertation thesis has shown that fuzzy logic models are able to improve prediction by appropriate setting of membership function and uncertainly integrated, and can compete with classical models that are standard used in finite domain. So this is all from my side. If anybody can cooperate with us in domain of text analysis, sentiment analysis, wavelet analysis, or fuzzy logic, please contact me on this email. Thank you.
Well, thank you, ma'am, for your presentation. So now time for the discussion. Anyone from the participants who would like to ask questions to ma'am? Not anyone? Okay. Thank you once again, ma'am.
Hello.
It's a great honor
It's a
and
great
privilege
honor
for
and
me
privilege for me
to introduce
to
Dr. Amit
introduce Dr.
Kumar.
Amit Kumar.
Dr. Kumar is a
Dr. Kumar is
professor
a
of
professor of
cybernetics and
cybernetics
cognitive
and
robotics
cognitive robotics
in the
in
Department
the
of
Department of
Electronics and
Electronics and
Telecommunication Engineering,
Telecommunication Engineering,
Madhapur
Madhapur
University,
University,
Calcutta, India.
Calcutta, India.
He has
He has
supervised 30
supervised
PhD
30
students
PhD students
and over
and
250
over
Master
250
of
Master
Engineering
of
students
Engineering students
in the broad
in
area
the
of
broad area
artificial
of
intelligence,
artificial intelligence,
cognitive science,
cognitive
and
science,
robotics.
and robotics.
He is an author of
He is an
18
author of
books,
18 books,
around 100
around
journal
100
papers,
journal papers,
and more than
and more
250
than
papers
250
in
papers
conference
in
proceedings,
conference
all
proceedings,
published by leading
all
international
published
publishers,
by leading international
including
publishers,
IEEE,
including
Elsevier,
IEEE,
Springer,
Elsevier,
and John Wiley.
Springer, and John Wiley.
His research works are well cited,
His research works are well cited
with an H index of 47,
with an H index of
as
47,
indicated in Google Scholar,
as
and a
indicated in
total
Google Scholar,
citation over to
and the total
12,000.
citation over to 12,000.
He is the recipient of AICT
Is the recipient
accredited
of AICT accredited
Career Award of Young
Career
Teachers
Award of
for
Young
the
Teachers
period
for the
1997 to
period
2000.
1997 to 2000.
He has been nominated as a
He
Fellow
has
of
been
West
nominated
Bengal
as a
Academy
Fellow
of
of West
Science
Bengal
in
Academy of
2010
Science in
and Indian
2010
Academy of
and
Engineering
Indian
in
Academy of
2015.
Engineering in 2015.
His current research
His
includes
current research
brain-computer
includes brain
interfaces
computer
to
interfaces
rehabilitate
to
people
rehabilitate
with
people with
perceptual learning and
perceptual learning
neuromotor
and
disorders.
neuromotor disorders.
Over to you, sir.
Over to you, sir.
Hello,
Hello,
my dear students,
my dear students,
friends and colleagues.
friends and colleagues.
A very good
A
afternoon
very
to
good
all of you.
afternoon to all of you.
This is my first
This is my
presentation
first
at
presentation
Haldia
at
Institute of
Haldia
Technology.
Institute of
I
Technology.
thank Professor
I
Deepak
thank
Kumar
Professor
Jana,
Deepak Kumar
the
Jana,
organizing
the
chief,
organizing
for
chief,
giving me an
for giving me
opportunity
an
to make a
opportunity to
presentation
make a
of
presentation
our team
of
research
our
at
team
Jadavpur
research
University.
at Jadavpur University.
Let me brief the slides.
The slides.
The topic of my presentation is brain-computer interfaces for assistive neuroprosthetic applications. The motivation of the present research is to translate human thoughts into actions by artificial means. For instance, the woman, as you see in this particular slide, who has lost her arm by an accident, takes help of her robot arm to sip a cup of tea. The presentation includes how this woman generates control commands for the robot for its desired task. The topics that I will be covering includes what is brain-computer interfacing, what we mean by electroencephalography or EEG, the merits of EEG BCI based systems, and 4 specific brain signals like ERD ERS, ERRP, SSBP and P300. I will discuss them in details so shortly. Then importance of time windowing in brain computer interfaces, and particularly my focus of attention is on our implementation of a position control system of a robot arm in 1 dimension and 3 dimensions, using which can be controlled by a human being. So the video representing this particular position control system will be also demonstrated. And finally, I will be coming to the concluding slide of the presentation. Now, what is brain computer interfacing? In a brain computer interface, we have a computer and a human brain, where the computer generates the stimuli for the brain and the brain in turn returns certain electrical signals or brain images which are captured by the computer for further analysis of the brain. That means what the brain is doing at that point of time. The brain signals acquired are done particularly by employing specialized brain imaging devices like electroencephalography or EEG, functional near infrared spectroscopy or FNIRS, functional magnetic resonance imaging or fMRI, and many others. These acquired signals or images are pre-processed to eliminate artifacts and noise, and the relevant features from the signals or images are extracted for classification and also control. I will illustrate these individual things in detail in subsequent slides. What is electroencephalography or EEG? The human brain comprises several billions of neurons connected via synapses. These neurons either fire individually or in a team. When a single neuron fires, it generates some electrical signals, but the amplitude of the signal is very small and then cannot be actually acquired by a machine. In order to have significant amplitude of the signal, a number of neurons in the brain which fire synchronously are to be identified, and then that can be captured from specific regions of the brain. When the neurons fire synchronously, the amplitude is really significant, of the order of few microvolts, which can be amplified, and then we can understand what the brain is doing at each point of time from the nature and waveform of the signals. Now, the electrical signals which are liberated from the brain is actually acquired by EEG machine or electroencephalography machine. I am particularly providing EEG and only EEG today because due to time limitation we cannot cover any other machines in details today. Now, what is inside an EEG? Whenever the electrical signals which are captured from the brain having only few microvolts need to be actually enhanced or amplified with the help of a voltage amplifier. The typical amplification factor is between 60 to 100, and the amplified signal is then passed through an analog filter. Actually, our brain signals typically lie in the range 0 to 100 Hz. So the analog filter usually has the upper cutoff frequency of 100 Hz. These analog signals has to be processed later on a computer, but for these, as the students, you must be knowing we need an analog to digital converter. This analog to digital converter converts the analog signal into digital signals which are transferred to a computer for subsequent operations. The subsequent operations are digital signal processing, feature extraction, and classification of the original brain signal into one or more classes. For example, suppose one person is actually thinking of moving his right hand or thinking of moving his left hand. In that case, when he or she thinks of moving his or her right hand, will be getting some signal from the left motor cortex just opposite to the arm, and whenever she thinks of moving her left hand, will be getting some signal in the right motor cortex. Now, by acquiring the signal, can we say that the person was thinking to move her left hand or right hand, or what else the person was doing? Was the person engaged in problem solving of arithmetic, or was the person thinking of some games that he has to play just next day? All this information can be obtained by classifiers, pattern classifiers. And the pattern classifiers should have, before pattern classification, we need to extract certain features, and the features should be noiseless. And that's why we require some digital signal processing to eliminate noise, certain features to be extracted from the brain signals, and these brain signals need to be classified into one or more classes, one of several classes. Say it is left hand movement, thinking of left hand movement, thinking of right hand movement, thinking of arithmetic problem solving, or thinking of the game. we can identify any one of these or many others by a pattern classification technique. Now, in the subsequent slides, I will be discussing 4 out of many possible brain signals. Many means typically around 20, but in fact there are 200 such brain signals. Of these 200 signals, only around 20 are widely being used, and out of them, only 4 I will be discussing, because in my presentation today, these 4 signals are good enough for this presentation. The first brain signal that I will be discussing is ERDERS, event related desynchronization, followed by event related synchronization. Suppose a person at this time point, this is a brain signal with time. The x-axis is time, y-axis is in millivolt, that is brain signal after amplification in the EEG machine. Now at this time point, suppose a person thinks of moving her right hand or left hand. This is called motor imagination, because he or she is trying to move her body parts, and that is called motor imagination, MI. So the subject started his or her motor imagination at this time point, and he or she completed the motor imagination at this time point. That means during this interval, the person was thinking to move his or her left hand or right hand. What happens in the brain signal at that time point? You will wonder to learn, my dear students, that from this time point, when the person thought of moving his or her hand, the brain signal amplitude gradually diminishes, and it continues diminishing until the person stops thinking motor imagination. Once the person completed motor imagination at this point, the signal amplitude again grows. It continues growing. How long? Until the amplitude of the signal becomes equal to the amplitude of the signal before ERD started. That means the raw signal here had certain amplitude, and the same amplitude has to be attained by the signal later. Now, if you divide the entire V type of signal into 2 components, you can see the first component where the signal amplitude gradually diminishes is called event related desynchronization. Why desynchronization? Because the amplitude here differs from the original signal amplitude considerably. And what happens later? When the person stopped imagining motor movement, the signal amplitude grew, and the amplitude here becomes equal to the amplitude of the signal before ERD took place. So this is some sort of synchronization in amplitude of the signal with respect to previous. Now, whenever a person he moves her left hand or right hand, this is called motor execution. And whenever she thinks of moving her hand, it is called motor imagination. In either case, motor imagination or motor execution, this V type of signal is liberated from the brain, from the motor cortex region, somewhat from the top of my brain, as you can see through the camera. But whenever, as I told you, when the person thinks of moving her right hand, the signal amplitude will be more and more prominent in the left side of the motor cortex. And when she thinks of moving her hand or really moves her hand, left hand, then you will be getting much more pronounced signal of V type in the right part of the motor cortex. In both the cases, motor imagination or motor execution, the signal nature is V type, but the amplitude will be much more when you execute, that means move your arm, rather than when you just think of moving your arm. So this very important signal called motor imagery, or the full technical name is ERDERS, is widely being used in brain computer interface research, and we'll be using it to control the movement of a robot arm. How exactly? That I'll be discussing shortly after I cover the signals. Hello students, now I'll be discussing one more interesting signal. This is called P300. Suppose a person was very intuitively and very actually very clearly, actually he was very much attentive to listen a music of his favorite music at this time point. But suddenly he found that a bombasting sound came into the room. What happens to the person? The person's entire attention then moved from the listening to music to the bombasting sound, because it's a peculiar sound that appeared suddenly. and immediately you will find that the brain signal amplitude will be gradually changing and increasing after within 300 milliseconds from the time point the person found a bomb bursting sound. What will be done? You will find from the back part of your brain, which is called the parietal lobe, somewhat here. The parietal lobe is most important for your many applications like motor command generation, motor control, and many thing else, planning, particularly planning. So from that very parietal lobe, within 300 milliseconds from the onset of this signal called oddball stimulus. Why oddball? Because bomb bursting sound is odd to the listening to music. And what happens? It has a big peak. This peak is very high, and you can find this kind of signal as a signal with a peak approximately 300 millisecond away from the onset of this oddball stimulus, means bomb bursting sound. This signal is called P300 because P stands for parietal lobe in the back of your brain, and 300 means 300 millisecond from the onset of any oddball stimulus. We'll be also using this signal in our robot control system by artificial means. The next signal that we'll be discussing is called steady state visual evoked potential. What is this? Whenever you find anything on a TV screen that is flickering means that is maybe shaking or maybe getting on and off periodically with some frequency, say 6 hertz, then what will happen? Then from the occipital lobe, which is just opposite to your eyes, that means you just suppose you have two sticks, you just have the back side of your eye, and at that point this is called steady, you will be calling it occipital lobe. From the occipital lobe you'll be getting a signal something like this, which is frequency modulated. In this case x-axis is frequency and not time, like the previous two signals. So whenever you see any flickering signal on the screen which is vibrating or which is actually getting on and off on a TV screen, or whenever you are listening to something, whenever you are just observing something, maybe a movie, suddenly the movie changed, an advertisement came, and maybe in the advertisement there is flickering noise kind of thing. If there is a flickering in the advertisement of 6 hertz, then your brain will pick up this signal. So this, or maybe suppose in the light control system outside, say whenever you are using the traffic control system, I mean for movement of car, which sometimes is say having say just some 6 hertz pulses getting on and off, green light getting on and off like kind of thing, you will pick up that signal, you'll be picking up that signal by the occipital lobe of your brain just opposite your eyes. So from this 6 hertz signal, the brain releases this 6 hertz signal from the skull, and on feeding this to a computer, the computer understands that you were observing a flickering thing, something flickering in visual spectra that the computer understands. How does the computer understand? It needs some kind of signal processing and some kind of classification that I'll be discussing shortly. The fourth signal, which is most important but was not much popularized before our work started, is called error related potential. Whenever you commit any error, particularly movement related error, that means suppose you are moving casually on the corridor and suddenly you just hit someone in the corridor in 90-degree turn. So immediately your attention appears, what happened? You just hit someone at 90-degree turn because you were casual and you understood that you committed an error. Once you identified you committed an error at this time point, the signal amplitude that comes out from your brain gradually will be negative, and then again become positive and again negative. It has a 3 cycle, negative, positive, negative kind, and this signal is called error related potential. This signal appears only when you found that you made some mistake in any motor related task such as movement, or you found someone else, maybe a person or even a robot or a machine, to commit some mistake. When a robot provides you some drinking water and suppose you are unable to move your arms, a robot is provide you drinking water, and in that case if the robot fails, then immediately you will be releasing this signal, and this is called error related potential. What should we do with all these signals? These signals are actually the basic or foundations of brain computer interfaces. You will release these signals from your brain and you have to program on your computer to to actually understand the meaning of these brain signals. And then you have to say what to do by the computer, what the computer should do when it understands that you release this signal, and what is the interpretation of this signal. What actually mistake did you do that the computer understands from the program, and what it has to do that is also written in the in the program, and that will be coming to discuss shortly. One important thing in BCI is time windowing. Why time windowing is needed? Just suppose you are sitting beside a pond. You see, beside the pond there is not significant change in the pond. Maybe you can find a few swans or ducks. I mean, just actually swimming on the pond, and they will not move very fast. But if you are sitting beside a ocean or beside a sea, you can find tides coming in an irregular manner. Some big tides comes now, and the tide may not come after a long time, so you may miss the tide. In order to capture the tide on your say camera, what you need to do, you have to wait for a long time before the tide might come. Same thing here. You do not know when the brain signal will be released. So what you need to do, you keep your hardware ready such that when the brain signal appears, they should not be missed in any way out. How will you do this thing? For this, actually, students, at time point at time point T1, you have to be alerted. How will you be alerted? You have in the BCI system there is something called fixation cross. So the programmer will put a fixation cross on the screen, on the PowerPoint screen. You will be asked to look at the fixation cross. So as you are looking into the fixation cross, your brain actually, I mean, is actually taking care of just looking at that, and you will be asked to be attentive to that only, and you need not think anything else. If you can do that kind of thing, then in the next time point some stimulus will appear. What is the stimulus? The stimulus will say, hello student, please move your right hand. That is the stimulus. Or the stimulus will say, hello student, please just move your eyelids. So these are some of the things that is the stimulus will be coming. And once the stimulus will be coming on screen, you have to wait, because next time some signal will be released by your brain, and that signal has to be captured by the computer, particularly by using EEG machine. So the EEG machine has to be made ready by the program, so that at time cycle T3 it should not miss the signal. If it misses the signal, then it misses the signal forever, and the effect of the stimulus that appears before your eyes or before your mindset will have no effect really. So when the stimulus appears, before that time, from that point onwards, or much before from that, the computer has to be ready to pick up the signals that will be released by your brain in the next time point. And that is why, I mean, time windowing is required in the EEG based BCI system. Hello students, now I will be presenting a very fantastic and fascinating experiment on EEG based position control system of an artificial robotic limb. I mean, I just briefly outline what is this, and then in the video you will see how wonderful thing our students, undergrad students, have achieved, few years ago, 4 years ago from now. They can control a robot arm just by their mental thoughts. They want something to bring the robot arm from somewhere else to your arm, and it will bring a ball to your arm from a far distance. How does the robot do that thing? That is by only programming, and you'll wonder to see that everything is possible so nicely and so easily that even undergrad, first year, second year students can develop all these things. But how will you learn all this? I just give you very elementary things right now to explain what exactly we did over last 4-5 years. Hello students, just think of, there is a motor. I believe all of you remember motors from your school days. A motor must have some crank or some link which is moved by the motor axis. So this is the motor, and there is a crank or a link which can be turned by the motor. The link actually moves on a circular rim. There is a circular rim, and the link has to be moved on the circular rim with the help of this motor. Now there is a subject, which a subject means just a person. A person who is performing BCI experiment is called a subject. What he is doing? He is observing the motion of he is observing at the motor link, at this link. But why? He is observing the link because he wants to control the position of the link. Whenever he desires to move the link will automatically start moving. And when he wants to stop moving, that also he can do. But how will he do all these things? That will be learning right now. What the person is doing here, just see very carefully. This is the motor axis and this is the link. Suppose it is at this position on the circular rim. Now the person thinks of moving her right hand. As he thought of moving her right hand, some electrical signals are liberated from the left motor cortex here, which is a V-type signal. This V-type signal is captured by the EEG machine and it goes to the computer. The computer understands that the subject or the person wanted the link to move. And so what the computer will do? It will command the motor to start moving. So the robotic arm or the link now starts moving on the circular rim. But this is the target point where the person wants to stop it. This is predefined before. As the robotic link crosses this target point, the subject finds what is going to happen right now. The robotic link crossed the target point, so error occurred. As the subject thought error occurred, immediately ERRP signal will be released from the midline of his brain. The ERRP signal having three peaks, one negative big peak, one positive big peak, and we just see, and again one negative big peak, one negative small peak. So this ERRP signal will be released by his brain whenever the person found that the robotic arm crossed this target point. And once the ERRP signal is released from the midline of his brain, immediately that signal is captured by EEG machine and that signal is then processed by the computer. What will the computer do? Computer understands that the subject released the ERRP signal, error related potential signal. That means the robotic arm must have done some mistake. And what is the possible mistake? Only one possible mistake, that the link can cross the target point where it has to stop. So whenever the subject released ERRP signal, the robot is commanded now by the computer program to stop there. But by that time, the robotic link has crossed, so it has moved somewhat here. So as it crossed the target position, it has to be placed properly. So that means the robotic link has to turn back by a small angle. We call it offset angle. How will it turn back? How much is the angle? To understand this, we repeat this experiment 100 times. And you have to take the average value of the offset angle. That means every time it crosses the target point, sometimes it crossed by 10 degree, sometimes 20 degree, sometimes 15 degree. You take the average of this and command the robot arm to move to the previous position by 15 degree offset angle. That means by turn back by 15 degree offset angle, the average value. And then it may be coming to the target point. So what the subject did, he will be releasing only two signals, the motor imagery, the V type of signal as we discussed before. This first signal, motor imagery signal, to command the robot arm to start moving. And when the robot arm crosses the target point, he releases the error related potential signal, this negative, positive and again negative signal to stop the robot arm and then to turn it by a fixed offset angle. That is the person did. Now the question comes, it is easy because it is one dimensional problem. Can we extend it to higher dimension? The answer is easy. Yes, we can. But before this, let's see, how did we program all these? Otherwise, it looks like magic without explaining how will you play the magic. So let's see, students, how will you really program this thing? Before the subject has to do all this part of the experiment, he has to be given some training. So the training time is approximately 21 days, every day for 2 hours. So during the training, what you have to do? You have to ask the subject to look at a fixation cross, a cross here for 2 seconds, when the subject will be very much alert only to see what to do next. And the subject will be asked now during the training phase to move her right hand. The subject is moving her right hand by mind. So did not move but thought of moving her right hand. So it is called right hand motor imagery. Motor imagery means imagination, not real movement. And right hand means she has to think of moving her right hand. But as she was thinking of moving her right hand for 3 seconds, then she has to wait to get the actually V type of signal, which requires some delay. So the V type of signal is appearing here only in the wait interval. And after some time, when the robotic arm crosses the target point somewhat here, the subject will be releasing ERRP signal. So subject releases ERRP signal or error related potential signal at this time point. Now in the hardware or in the program, what are done really? First, in the hardware part, there are two parts. One is motor imagination processing and classification and control, and this is ERRP processing and classification and control. But how you do? Motor imagination pre-processing means the V type of signal that the subject releases from the parietal lobe somewhat here has to be free from noise. So much noise are linked up with any brain signal. How to filter it? You have to know the right frequency band, and then you can filter it if the frequency bands of noise is slightly different. But if they're in the same band, then you have much more problem, and there are sophisticated techniques to handle this. So you have to filter the V type of signal and then extract certain features from the V type of signal. For example, you can take the V type of signals, sample values after regular interval of time, and these are called motor imagery features. So after feature extraction, you have to feed it to a classifier. For why? Because you need to feed it to a classifier to classify whether it is a right hand motor imagination or left hand motor imagination or simply nothing. If it is simply nothing, you need not pay attention to the system. But if it is right hand motor imagination, you may command the robotic link to turn clockwise. If it is a left hand motor imagination, you can command it to turn counterclockwise. So that's why you need a classifier to understand, what to do in the program. So in the program, what you are doing, if it is a motor imagination, instead of right and left right now, just consider motor imagination, then start moving the motor. That means we presume it can move only in one direction, say right direction. So if it is motor imagination, then start moving the motor. This is the motor. And then after this robot started moving, as you found here, the robotic link started moving unless it came to the target position. What happened? Once it came to the target position, you'll be getting the error related potential signal that I explained before. The error related potential signal is something like this: negative, positive, negative. And then what you do here, so at this time point when this is released from the midline of your brain, it has to be, again, certain features of the ERRP signal has to be extracted and fed to a classifier. Why to feed to a classifier? Because you need to know whether it is an error or not error. If it is an error, what to do? If it is an error, means the robotic link crossed the target point. The robotic link here, it crossed the target point, that is the error. If it is no error, mean it has not reached the target position yet. So if it crossed the target point, what to do? That is the logic. If error related potential occurs, stop the motor and turn back by a fixed offset angle. That means you have to stop the robotic arm and you have to turn it back by a small offset angle. And I told you that the offset angle you evaluate by taking the average of previous few offset angles for previous few experimental iterations. So this is all about in the program. Then what you do? The hardware itself says what is the program. First, you have to wait for motor imagination. Is motor imagination detected? That means you need to, in the program side, if there is a motor imagination, then you have to command the robot to start moving. If no motor imagination, just wait in a loop. If there is a motor imagination or V type of signal appearing in the parietal lobe, then command the robotic arm or the motor to start moving. So the robotic arm now starts moving here. Then wait unless ERRP detected. So if is ERRP detected? If no, then wait in a loop. If it is detected, that means the robotic link crossed the target point, and that's why ERRP is detected. Then stop the motor, stop this motor, and then turn back by a fixed offset. So the program is too simple. Even undergrad students, when some functions are developed by seniors like PhD students, they are provided to the undergrad students. They can build up this very small program in any language, in C and or maybe in Python. This is all about the very simple problem. And now let us move to the three-dimensional cases. What happens in 3D? Now suppose this is a subject, that means the person who is participating in the experiment. This is suppose a three-dimensional plane. OQW is the three-dimensional plane, and this is the practical robot OARS. You see there is a gripper. Gripper means fingers that can grip an object. Now there is a ball on the stand, all lying in this plane. So the stand, the ball, and the entire robot is lying on this plane. That is an advantage. So then what to do? The subject wants that the ball has to be gripped by the robot arm. How the ball can be gripped by the robot arm? Then the link RS, this link RS of the entire robot arm OARS of this, the link RS has to move towards the position of the ball. But how can it move to the position of the ball? Then the entire link has to be turned in this direction. In this direction means say counterclockwise. Just see, I mean, this is an axis, the blue axis is perpendicular to the robotic link. That means to the plane of this, to this plane, this line is perpendicular and it is turned counterclockwise. If you put a watch here, then it is counterclockwise. Then what to do? The RS link has to be brought towards RB. That means it is possible if I can turn this RS link counterclockwise up. And how to do this thing? This is done by motor imagination of the subject. Subject thinks his right hand motor imagination. As he thinks of right hand motor imagination, that means thinks of moving his right hand. Then the computer understands in the program it is done accordingly that the RS link has to be moved up counterclockwise. So RS link started moving. So it can be at the position RS dash. It can be at the position RS dash somewhat here not shown, where the RS dash line might have crossed RB. But as the subject found that RS axis is now in the position of RS dash, which has crossed the target line RB, then the subject will release the ERRP signal. What does it mean? It means the robotic link has made some mistake. What is the mistake? That it has crossed the target line RB. Instead of stopping at RB, it has gone to RS dash, which is beyond RB. So what to do? Then it has to turn back by an angle S dash RB. S dash is here RB. So it has to turn back by this small offset angle to come to the position of RB. That is needed. And then this is done by error related potential. So effectively the person has the two main signals that will be releasing. First he is releasing a V type of signal from the motor cortex region for left motor cortex region for right hand movement. And by that he just thought of moving the robotic link RS to move towards RB. And once it crossed the target line RB, he will be releasing ERRP signal from the midline of his brain. In either case, the EEG machine captures these signals and then processes them and classifies them to understand whether there was error or no error. If there is an error in the second case, then the robotic arm will be stopped and then it has to turn back to the position of RB. So the problem is here not much difficult if the entire robotic arm lies on the plane OQW. But the problem may be more complex when the situation is something like this. Suppose the ball is on a stand which is lying on the plane OQW and the entire robotic arm OARS is in the plane OPW. These are two different planes. OPW is one plane, OQW is a different plane. Then how the robotic arm can grip this ball? This is a great question. These are some of these steps written for your future understanding. But I just briefly outline what it does really. Effectively, first of all, I need to bring the OARS robotic arm in the plane OQW. But how can I bring it? Then I have to turn around the OA axis counterclockwise. That means if you put a clock on top of OA axis, just like if you put your watch on the top of OA axis and see downwards, you will find it is a counterclockwise movement like this. Counterclockwise movement like this. That means the entire plane OPW is along with the arm OARS, which is lying on the plane, is turned counterclockwise around OA axis. So entire robotic arm starts moving, including the plane OPW. What will happen when the plane OPW crosses OQW? Suppose the plane OPW is here, OP-W, not shown, P dash not shown, to avoid clumsiness. Then what will happen? The subject will release some ERRP signal because the plane OPW crossed the target plane OQW and therefore error is committed by the robot. So the subject will release the ERRP signal from the midline of his brain. So again here the subject is generating two signals. One is motor imagery signal to command the robot arm, to command this robot arm to turn around this axis way from OPW towards OQW. This is done by one V kind of signal or motor imagery signal liberated from the motor cortex, some from the right motor cortex for left hand movement. okay, for right hand movement, left motor cortex, as you already know. So then what happens? Then robot arm will start moving as the subject thought of moving this link way around the axis way. The entire link way RS will start moving around the axis way. And whenever it crosses the target plane OQW, he'll be releasing the ERRP signal from the midline. So by these two signals, he can control this. How? Because when OPW is at the point OQ-W, he will as he generates the ERRP signal from the midline of his brain, the computer receives it and decodes it and understands the error has been committed by the robot. That means OPW plane now has crossed OQW. So the computer will command the robot to stop by the program you have written, and it has to turn back from OQ-W to OQW plane by a small offset 3D angle, and just to stop here. This offset angle is again evaluated by the process I told you before. That means by taking average value of offset angle of previous few iterations. Now the robotic link ORS is placed on the plane OQW. But the ball is here. Ball has not been reached yet. Only thing is RS link is now below RB as happened to be previously here. That means in 3D from a different plane, the robotic arm is in the same plane of the ball. And then what to do? Then by previous technique, as I pointed out in the last slide, you can bring RS towards RB by motor imagination, one cycle of motor imagination, and as it will cross, RS will cross RB line. Okay, then you will be releasing some ERRP signal to stop it and turn back by a fixed offset angle. So the policy wise, it is same for one-dimensional robotic link, as I pointed out here, or multi-dimensional cases 3D. It is basically the same policy. Now you know I will be demonstrating with one video what really happens, what exactly happens. But before this video, a brief outline to the entire scheme. This work was published in IEEE CA Journal of Automatica Sinica 2017, and it is now very popularized. The idea is, just see, the subject is generating motor imagination signal, that is through in this pathway from the motor imagination signal from the motor cortex, and the EEG electrodes used are these that are mentioned. Okay, then certain features are to be selected from the V type of signal and fed to different links. First, I will control the link number 1. This is Jaco robot arm which was used for our purpose. This is link number 1. So first we have to control link number 1. Then we need to control link number 2. Then link number 3. In the previous studies, when we first published this paper in 2017, we did not know how to communicate to the robot that which link we want to control right now. So we had to do link 1, then link 2, then link 3 in order. That means depending on link positions, we have to actually generate the control commands for link 1 first, then link 2, then link 3, because we could not communicate to the robot which link we want to move right now. So that is a big problem. This is called fixed order link control. But gradually we have improved it, and that I will also demonstrate in subsequent part of my presentation. But this is our very first implementation in 2016-17. There is a classifier, link classifier. It will classify the links need to move clockwise or counterclockwise, or there is no movement. So whenever I need to move link number 1 here, first case, just see, link number 1 here means OA link. Okay, I need to turn around OA link. So then link number 1 is commanded, and then we have to classify the movement of the link. I mean, what I need to move the link. I need to move the link clockwise or counterclockwise or no movement. If it is a clockwise, say for example, then the motor driver is commanded to move this link 1 clockwise. So the link now started moving. That means this link way around way, the entire robot arm started moving clockwise, counterclockwise here. But in our example, say clockwise, for example, then what will happen? Then at one time point will come when the particular robotic arm will cross the target plane. Just see, when the robotic arm ORS will cross the target plane OQW. As it crosses the target plane, what to do? Immediately some ERRP signal will be released from the midline of the brain, and the electrodes used are FZ, CZ, PZ, these 3 electrodes. Certain features are to be selected from the negative, then positive, then negative ERRP signal, and that has to be fed to a classifier called error classifier to classify had there been any error or there were no error. If there are no error, then the robotic link can still continue moving because OPQ plane OPW plane has not reached OQW yet. But if the plane OPW crosses OQW, then error will be significant and error occurred. And then what to do? Then immediately we need to command the robotic link to stop movement. So displace link 1 until error occurs. Once error occurs, you stop moving the link. Once link 1 operation is finished, we pay attention to link 2's movement by the same procedure, and once this operation is finished, we move to the operation of link 3 in sequence with the same procedure. For each case, we need to move the link by motor imagination and stop the movement of the link by error related potential, only using these two signals. Now let us see the video. Hello students, can you hear me? Is it okay, or you cannot hear me?
Sir, you are absolutely audible.
Okay, thank you so much. So then let us see the video. Okay. Tell me whether you can see the video. Can you see the video? Hello students, can you see the video?
Yes.
Okay. So this is the subject. As you find, she is having EEG electrodes placed on her scalp, and the electrical signals liberated from her brain is transferred to the EEG signal acquisition system. This is the EEG signal acquisition system. And the output of the signal are then processed by a computer this side, which is connected to the robot arm for moving. The robot arm will actually pick up a ball from a stand and place it inside a box. See how this can be done only by two signals generated by the girl, that are two signals is motor imagination MI, that is V type of signal from the right motor cortex or left motor cortex, and ERRP signal. The subject will first think of moving this link by thinking of moving a right hand, and that link will start moving. These are the electrical signals liberated from the brain, but it is now static. Now it started just now. You will find the V type of signal, they are very prominent in some locations. That means motor imagery signal are very prominent. These are some of the V type of signal. Now please pay attention. This is the ball. The robot will pick up the ball and place in the box. First the subject thinks of moving this by right hand motor imagination. It goes to the plane, but it crossed the target plane. So error occurred and the robot arm is moved backward. Now she wants to bring it down to this line, but it has crossed that line. So went down and there was error, that is corrected. She now wants to make these two fingers horizontal, but it is no longer horizontal. So error occurred and it is corrected by the subject herself by moving right hand or left hand motor imagination. She wants to grip the ball by twice thinking right hand motor imagination. Now she wants to make it up by 45-degree angle, but it is more than 45 degrees. So error committed and she corrects it. Now she wants the entire robotic arm to move to the plane of the box, but that plane has been crossed. So error is committed by the robot and she wants to bring back, that is brought back. Now she wants to bring this link down towards the plane of the box, but it has crossed that line. So error occurred and corrected. Now she thinks of twice right hand motor movement to release the ball. Once it is complete, the ball is dropped. So that is all about, and now you casually can see the entire video once again. I will not speak anything. The electrode positions you can see here, that is CZ means actually central electrodes. Z electrodes are central electrodes, and even number, odd number electrodes are left and right side electrodes. Now observe carefully. I am not explaining because then you cannot observe. These are motor signals. Here the subject is taking lot of time to think. That's why it is delayed. And now, we'll be discussing, the additional thing and modifications that we worked out later. After 2017. So basically, you just see we have used, certain techniques and technologies that I cannot discuss because of timing problem here. So within 1 hour, you cannot finish everything. And to explain them, actually, you require 3-4 months to understand the entire technique. But if anybody is interested, Jadavpur University open for any students to pursue any kind of research here. So we have used actually certain brain signal features called ZORT parameters and power spectral density at different frequencies. And this is adaptive autoregressive parameters. These parameters are actually extracted to represent the motor imagery signal. Those features are actually fed to the classifier. For classification, we use linear support vector machine classifier for both motor imagery and error related potential signals. The steady state positional error, that means say how much is the final error between the target position and the actual and the final position and the target desired position, that is 0.2% error. The total time required for transfer operation is 18 seconds, and the entire work was done on Dell workstation with 16 GB RAM octa-core Intel Xenon processor. Now, after 2017, we made some modifications, and these are published here in 2019 and 20. What are these? The main problem in 2017 realization that I have just shown in the video, that it has got, fixed order link selection. I have to I move the link number 1, then link number 2, then link number 3 in a fixed order. Why? Because I cannot communicate to the robot which link I want to move right now. So, but I really want random order link selection. If I want link 3 only, then why should I go for link 1 and 2? Then their wait time in link 1 movement, no movement, link 2 movement, no movement. So you have to have so much wait cycles. Then we learn how to communicate to the robot. How to communicate, I will explain in the next slide. So this is one point. And then actually, if we can, when the robotic link crosses the target point, there is an error as you found. And we moved it by a fixed offset. But can we guarantee by moving it by a fixed offset we can reach the desired point? The answer is no. There may be still small offset, still small error. So what could we do if when the robotic link cross the target point, if we reduce the speed of the robot and move again in the opposite direction and continue moving until the displacement between the target point and the robot end effector is very, very small, then that could be better. So each time the robotic link cross the target point, we reduce the speed and turn it to the opposite direction. And by this manner, we could improve two things. First thing is we can select the right link. As I pointed out initially, I will explain how we did this random order link selection. And second is how can we reduce the error by turning it in opposite direction with a smaller speed and repeating it until the target position and the robot's actual position has a small angular deviation. So let's see how can we complete the random order link selection. With each link, we connected one LED light emitting diode, and we have made a hardware to just generate a square wave for it. Square wave means it will have a pulsating kind of thing, on and off. It is just generating some flickering signal. The lamp will be on and the lamp will be off, like kind of thing. So LED will be on and off at a regular frequency. Suppose 2 Hz here, say 4 Hz here, and say 6 Hz here, and 3 different LEDs, say red, green, and blue. So each are actually getting on and off with a period of say 2 Hz, with a frequency of 2 Hz, 4 Hz, and 6 Hz. Now suppose the subject wants to comment this robotic link 1. So how does he do? The subject simply will observe to the LED, red LED, which is flickering at 2 Hz. Then whenever what will happen then? Then SSBP signal will be liberated from the occipital lobe at 2 Hz, and in the program, you have provisions in the program to pick up this SSBP signal at 2 Hz and to understand that the subject is interested to comment this robotic link to move. So this is the way we could communicate to individual link of the robot that which link we like to move right now without physically connecting. We just By thought only we can select which link we like to move and then do the same operation of motor imagination and error related potential signal as we did before for individual link. So this is the idea we have adopted for individual link selection rather than selecting all links one by one in a fixed order. So this is random order link selection. And now let me conclude because only 7 minutes left. So what we did so far, we could generate one method for translating thoughts into actions by artificial means. This is very challenging because you can use this robotic arm for a person who has lost her arm and you can rehabilitate that person with artificial limb. In fact, we are working for this and we have a tie-up with NRS Medical College to actually replace some legs of some beggars, who has lost their legs, and how to actually will connect two motors to make them like normal person, which motors, where the motors will be commanded by the brain signals, and he will be carrying a small device in his pocket, or maybe some portions inside his body that can be also absorbed. That has to be thought of. So right now we think of just putting it in a small pocket of the person and with a small battery, and he can control the movement of the artificial robotic link that has to be connected to his leg when he lost his leg. Then EEG device, as we found, is very good choice. It's a very good choice for real-time brain-computer interface experiments. But why? Because EEG can immediately give you the brain response. What you commanded to the brain, that can be immediately response to that you can see from the brain, and the computer understands what the brain is doing at every instance of time. If the some device which you use like fMRI or other kind of device which produces images, they are sluggish. Sluggish means it takes lot of time, so you do not understand over every instance what the brain is doing. So EEG is a good choice for this purpose. And advantage is EEG is very low cost nowadays. You can buy an EEG machine at say 30,000 rupees, and then any laboratory can afford it, and you can do some experiments on this. Then we have proposed one technique for motor imagery and error related potential based position control of a brain computer interface, where the person can think of the movement of the motor, think of the movement of the arm by generating motor imagination or V type of signal, and stop the motor by generating the error related potential signal. Using these two signals, we learned how to control the movement of a motor, and that can be done for individual link in sequence or maybe in a random order as you pointed out. In step 4 we included that fixed order position control, which has some limitation, can be overcome by step 5, which is random order link selection, that I proposed by connecting LED with flickering frequency with different links. Then to improve the positional accuracy, that means we do not want much overshoot or undershoot. What we suggested that each time the robotic link cross the target point, you reduce your velocity maybe to half of its previous velocity, and then the speed will be small, and then it cannot go beyond some limits. And effectively, if you have a check, of having multiple times of ERRP signal, then you can stop it by having multiple ERRP, and then but the accuracy and positional overshoot will be reduced. And that's all about my presentation. These are the papers that we published over last 8 years. We published approximately 30 papers. Out of these, say 14 IEEE transactions, all on brain computer interfacing. And it is possible to do research on this because this is a new topic and very, very challenging, and doing work here is now very, very encouraging because publication time is less. After a few years, it would be difficult to publish in many journals. In every journal, if you publish now, it will be relatively easy. So that's all, my students, and I wish you best luck in your both life and career. And that's all. Now I am ready to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much, sir.
Please, Anupam sir, please mute, please, Anupam sir.
Hello?
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Sir, am I audible, sir?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So, we are very grateful for your inspiring lecture. Actually, students are listening in our screen. So, directly they cannot communicate and they have huge questions. So, I request our students, please, if you do research work, please you contact and search in Google. All information are available. Our Professor Amit Konar. So whenever you have any doubt, please send a mail or you make a call. Sir is always ready to help us. And from our institute, we are really grateful for giving a such a nice lecture, an innovative lecture. Especially, I say, sir, you have given very lucid lectures and inspiring lecture. Some students has motivated, but they cannot give directly questions to you. I hope in near future, please visit our institute in physical mode, so that we can arrange a big seminar in the in near future. So thank you from our side.
Thank you very much, Professor Deepak Kumar Jana. I am very grateful to all of you for giving me a chance to make a presentation of our research. And I will be very happy to learn that if students enjoy this and they have questions, they will also share. So that will be another source of inspiration and enjoyment for all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So I hand over the Dr. Anupam De or Dr. Somobera, please announce their lunch break, and the next schedule will be in offline mode, please.
চলো মৌসুমী শেষ হয়ে গেছে।